I don't understand why I have to get rid of my collection.
There's a point where every collection needs its own museum. It's going to a good home.
But my Tony Danza mugs and posters, they are priceless.
Stop watching Storage Wars and Pawn Stars. You don't have those actual priceless items.
But I might.
Fandom, a word that can mean many, many different things to many, many different people. But before I can get there, let me take a moment to pause. Now, I watched a documentary recently on Andrei Rozumov. Remember him? That's okay, you probably don't. But back in the day, he was, well, simply larger than life. But anyways, I watched this documentary, and somewhere in the information, somewhere in the story of a life greater than life, somewhere around a slam, I realized that one of the things we all have there to escape to, or have there waiting for us, is that ever larger than life, at least in our minds, the one character or two, perhaps an ensemble, but it's the characters that we want to escape to. Whether we are to battle them, create with them, or just exist with them, it is at the heart of what makes one loyal to their chosen fandom. Welcome to the Chronicles of Geek. Sit back and join Ish and myself, Damon Roth, the geek from the north, this week while we escape in the most excellent world of fandoms. And don't forget to subscribe and like below. Okay, Andrei Rozumov, any idea? Maybe I should have made this a question for this week's show. But then it would have been hard to do the show because it's kind of one of the... Anyways, doesn't matter. Andrei Rozumov, or better known as Andre the Giant, was the last superstar of the territory era of one of the original fandoms. Now, if you were like, what? The last star? But I watched him wrestle in the WWE in the 90s, or the early 90s. Don't worry, just go with the knowledge that, like all things, the world of sports entertainment has a history all unto its own, and that Andre was the bridge that put over the WWE, in his quest of global domination. Man, that sounds like a show right there. Anywho, wrestling, whether WWE or AEW or WCW or Stampede or PWA or VIPW, the list goes on and on and on like a Miz promo. And wrestling is the perfect example of what a fandom is and how it can be good or bad. Okay, so you all know that my favorite fandom is, of course, Star Wars. And for the record, I identify neither as a complacent Jedi that couldn't see a sandstorm coming behind a pod race on Tatooine, nor a Sith, even though many folks might just assume that. No, I identify more along the lines of the Skirta clan. Seriously, my wife's and my wedding vows, both written separately and apart from each other, with no hints to each other, both included the Mando wedding vows. How deep does your fandom go? Now, okay, I am obliged to take a moment and say, if you are going like, what? Why would anyone do that? Look up the vows. If you know us, you understand. Fandoms can become something that define a person. They are a place where those who enjoy the same escape can escape together. And they are not new. Shirley Temple? Look her up if you have to. She knew that all too well. Even Mozart had his group. Okay, let's cut to the chase. I can spend all day long, heck, we could travel a parsec, distance or time, before I would run out of the positive things about fandoms. Camaraderie, a place to belong, to exist, yada yada, the list is just extensive. But there is a dark side to any fandom. and it is simply that it can become an obsession. And this obsession can and has destroyed lives regardless of the fandom. Deadheads? It's a thing. Again, look it up. Now, they would quit jobs and abandon careers and families to follow the other grateful. Some families have even fallen so far down the rabbit hole of fandoms that some folks refer to it as a cult. Now, how many of you know of a family that always has to travel to Disney World or Land or Disney something every single vacation? That's fandom. Or perhaps that couple that has every piece of everything from their fandom, covering every square inch of their house. It's a little bit on the extreme side of fandom. Let me say, may those that have gone to the Manda already help you if you ever get a Star Wars fact, Legends or canon, wrong. It is my fandom, after all. However, that is a perfect example. You see, I know it's a line. If I literally start arguing about whether my imaginary make-up-believe universe is better than your made-up imaginary fantasy world, we both need to go for a long walk and think about what we are doing. Because it's a line. And yes, it can be blurry, and yes, it can be passionate. Ever quote a stat wrong to a sports fan? I mean a really, really fan? Fandoms are fandoms whether they are a house of wizards, a plucky group of wayward souls, or one's favorite sports team that you never miss a game for and know the family history of the second assistant coach in charge of towels, water, and parking. Or that hands down, Andre was the greatest wrestler ever. A fandom is a fandom, and we protect them like our sisters and our brothers. And that's because in a way, they are.
Randall Quizomatic. It is time, humans, once again for the Randall Quizomatic, which I just said. I'm not sure why I'm stuck in a loop, but sometimes that happens. Anyways, the first question, although related to what we just talked about, the answer is not in the show. It is a question dedicated to the wrestling fans that are out there, and apparently, according to this, those that like bamboo. Anyways, which gentle giant forced the WWE to change its name from the World Wrestling Federation to the World Wrestling Entertainment? That doesn't even... Anyways, that's question number one. Randall Quizomatic, question two. When Damon says Mando, what group in Star Wars does he mean? Like, the people that he would like to be for some strange reason or something, anyways.
Welcome to the Geek Flashback News, where we are all the way back in 1973, where this week, specifically on the 28th, one of the world's largest musical fandoms releases what becomes the longest album run on the Billboard charts in the history of charted music. Holding a spot on the charts for 917 weeks, not including its modern chart run once the rules were changed in 2009. But that change is news for another time. Yes, folks, way back in 1973, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon ascended to musical dominance, creating a legion of fans that remain loyal to this very day, with new fans joining to fill the ranks. With over 27 million fans on Facebook, the fandom of Pink Floyd has become one of the longest lasting and stable in the musical industry. Even to this day, you can find new merchandise on the shelves of retailers, not only for the group, but for the album Dark Side of the Moon itself. The actual album cover has become one of the most recognizable ever created. It is without a doubt this reporter's opinion that all of you have heard the songs on this album, at least a few of the songs, more than once in your existence. This has been the Geek Flashback News. Today's Geek Flashback News has been brought to you by Ripped Apparel. Use the promo code GNN10 for all your finer geek apparel needs. And don't forget to subscribe below to keep up on all your fan-fueled content.
Rando Quizomatic question 3. What year was Dark Side of the Moon released? What year was the album released?
Now, about that theory in Star Wars that I was talking about, I don't just want to come out and say, here it is, because, well, simply, where would the fun be in that? Now, instead, over the next few episodes, I'm going to build the case. What? You thought it was one of those uneducated fandom trolls that just spouts the theory and runs away?
Well, I would have to say...
We don't talk about that night. There was Carillion Whiskey and Sebek.
Okay, Nerfy Herder.
What? Anyways, yes, the background of this theory. First, we are only going to deal with, as much as I don't want to, but we are only going to deal with Disney, which is the current canon. For now, anyways. And at the beginning, there are two things that we are just all going to agree upon. In Star Wars, the Force is real, and it works in mysterious ways. The second is that there are good and bad people, and good and bad things happen, like starships just disappearing. Now, there are multiple time points that we are going to need to consider, and this week we're going to look at the first one, which is from the High Republic novel, Light of the Jedi. An excerpt. Page 188. His finger hovered over the alarm for ultrasound, and he didn't know what the doctor could do, but perhaps something, and was pressing it even as Marie Santeca coughed. A sharp barking sound, and her seizures ended. Her eyes opened, and she looked about her in wonderment. They locked on Marchion, and she smiled, broad and kind, and open as a child. "Why, Marchion, hello," she said. "Did I lose myself again? I'm sorry. You know how I get when I take us traveling. There's just so much to see, you know." Her index finger twitched on the control panel beneath her hand, and Marchion felt the gaze drop from hyperspace. "It's all right, Mari. Everything's just fine." Mari swiveled the medical pod, taking it vertical, so instead of looking up at him, she could stare him right in the eye. Her mind was clouded by age, but her gaze was not. Her eyes were clear and focused, and she never seemed perturbed in the least by his own black orbs. "Well, that was a good one in any case. Found a new path between Passana and Uruber. Should reduce travel times by a third, maybe more. It'll make you a bundle." Marie Santeca had been a hyperspace prospector since she was 6 years old. Something had happened to her as she traveled out in the interstellar wilderness with her family, and it had changed her mind, opened her up so she could see things no one else could. The paths. For some years, she had the ability on behalf of her people and brought them wealth and renown, but that fame brought with it a price. Marchion Roll's own family had taken Marie Santeca, stolen her, no reason to call it anything other than what it was. So historical point number 1 established in canon, Light of the Jedi. There are individuals in the galaxy that can navigate hyperspace by using the Force, or at least one particular Force skill in particular. As the novel progresses, that becomes more evident. Now, Marie Santeca, a human female hyperspace prospector turned captain of the Nil for over 100 years, is an example of this kind of air quotes, forced, air quotes, user that can navigate space. Although she is the extreme example where she can see the past beyond the past. Interesting. And here we thought only the robots could do it.
Droids. I'm a robot. Sheesh,
Yes, I know. We had this conversation before. There are differences between robots, droids, and all the others, I know. But back to the theory. We have just established that the Force can be used to travel around the galaxy as a navigator who is riding beams of something on something. Now, if we look at the Star Wars galaxy specifically and jump to around the time of the prequels trilogies, on the fringe of the unknown region, the Chaos to some, the Navigators Guild peddles their unique gifts of navigating through hyperspace. This is described in great detail in the Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising novel. Individuals, these navigators, who are able to meld with hyperspace and navigate from one star system to the next following paths. Sound familiar? The Chiss, Thrawn's people, call this unique ability Third Sight. It's a unique ability bestowed on children, normally female, where they are able to meditate and plot the navigational routes necessary for hyperspace travel. Now, it's an interesting approach to have child navigators on warships, but nobody said the Chiss were anything but calculating individuals. Have you met Thrawn? But back to point number one. Trained, and in some cases untrained, individuals can utilize a unique gift, perhaps the Force to us in the know, to navigate hyperspace.
You forgot to mention what the Chiss call these children navigators of theirs.
Good catch, Ish. But that's a week too early.
Rando Quizomatic question 4. In Star Wars, it's called hyperspace. In Star Trek, it's called warp travel. What about in Futurama?
Fandoms, as we have discussed, can be part of many relationships, including my own. Now, would you ever believe that my wife and I first really bonded? I mean, found a shared passion that we didn't know that we could share in a small community hall, watching a bunch of sweaty people hug and throw each other around? Well, it's true.
It is. I've seen the pictures. And by the way, why can't I go to one?
One day-ish. We just have to wait for the local promotions to start up again.
Randall Quizomatic question 5. What is VIPW short for? Hint, it's located on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada. I don't know why I have to say that, homie. You always tell me to say it, but you think they would know where Vancouver Island is by now. Randall Quizomatic results. Okay, humans, that's the 5 questions for today. So let us peruse the answer book to see what the answers are. To the one of you in Springfield, first of all, your firewall is horrible, and second of all, why would I memorize them when there is a book to tell me? Now, back to, where's the book? Hang on.
This week's Randall Quizomatic is brought to you by MetallicDiceGames.com. If you need dice or other gaming devices, use the code GNN and bound on over to our favorite little gaming site on the net for 10% off all your gaming needs.
Well, it's a good thing I can learn fast. The answers are, question number 1. World Wildlife Fund, WWF, the Giant Panda, that body slammed the World Wrestling Federation. Question 2. Mandalorian. Yes, the one that Boba Fett is supposed to be part of, but actually isn't, or is, or isn't, or I do not understand this show. Question 3. Dark Side of the Moon was released in 1973. Question 4. Which type of engine is used, or how do they move around in Futurama? Well, keeping on the theme of dark, it is a dark matter engine, which of course is the only plausible way as it moves the universe around the spaceship. And number 5. The last Randall Quizomatic question for today. The final one. Are you ready? Yes, human, just tell them the answer. Why can I never build up drama? You always say I can't build it. Tell them the answer. I got it. Vancouver Island Professional Wrestling. That's it for this week, humans. Hope you got more than I did, which was all of them. So you can't get more than I did. You only do as good as I... Well, that's it. I need a beverage.
There are moments in life where we grow, where we mature, where we move on from one fandom to the next. Or perhaps the fandom becomes part of our soul. There was a day where I was in the theater, where I lost my childhood innocence. The day I lost one of my heroes. The day Optimus Prime died. The toys went into a box to be forgotten, and I have only seen parts of the movies that came out since then. And in the same year, I was in a smoky room filled with dads and kids, and the odd mum or two. The screen was huge, and how they got it that big, I had no idea. There was a projector or something, 3 big bright bulbs. You see, Dad had said we couldn't watch the pay-per-view. It just cost too much. But then that morning at breakfast, he said he had a surprise. And for a different story, I learned what being owed a favor truly meant. You see, for something my dad had done to get some officer out of a jam somewhere along the way, got us into a room at the club. Or I mean mess. With what I can only presume to be a properly bought and paid for pay-per-view fee. And there I was with the officer kids. And an odd brethren of mine scattered around. And the look on that one kid's face when I sat down. But then, after what was definitely a television and entertainment milestone, come on, 97,000 people all crammed into the Silver Dome at once? At the age of 12, I learned and saw firsthand what it meant for one generation to pass the torch to the next. Andre, you will always be the giant. And by the way, if you haven't seen it yet, check out the A&E biography on Andre the Giant and bring some tissue. As an aside, how he was treated by Vinny and the WWE after WrestleMania 3 was why I lost touch of the wrestling fandom the first time. But I digress. Fandoms, as we all know, come and go for us. Some may be for life, but most are a fad that we will move into and then out of. Sometimes it's because there's no new content, and sometimes it's because we went a different path. Sometimes, however, we part. We grabbed on too tight and let it consume us. Hands up to those of you that need to limit your love for one of your passions. On the left, there, you. Hands up. Don't be shy. We have all fallen down the fandom rabbit hole. Give us a post in the comments on what your favorite fandom is. Fandoms are communities. They're families. They can be an instant group of friends, an instant source of knowledge, a helping hand. And they can simply let you not only escape to a place, but to actually allow you to be the fabulous you that you always wanted to be. Until next time, I'm Damon Roth, the Geek of the North, here escaping with you on the Chronicles of Geek on the Geek News Now Network. And don't forget to subscribe and like below. And always, my friends, stay safe, stay brave, and most of all, stay geeky.